As expected today, DJI announced the Mavic Mini. For the most part, those leaks and stuff that I talked about ended up being true in terms of things like the specs and all that. There were some surprises still, some good, some bad, so that's something that'll be interesting to talk about. I found it kind of interesting with this drone, there's no kind of like fanfare or anything, no like announcement convention or presentation, essentially just like a trailer. And with the trailer, you can see they're basically advertising this thing as under 250 grams. It seems like they imply, you know, you can fly this around people and stuff like that. For example, hey, get that basketball dunk and all that. For official dates and all that, it says here from the official DJI site, it says the Mavic Mini will be available for pre-order beginning October 30th at storedji.com. Flagship stores and authorized retailers and partners Mavic Mini will come in two purchase options. The standard version, which includes the Mavic Mini remote controller, one battery, extra propellers, and all necessary tools and wires for $399. That's kind of a key thing, tools, which we'll talk about. And then you can get the Fly More combo for $499 US. So again, for the most part, it's what as expected in terms of all the leaks. And for a refresher about things like the basic specs, which turned out for the most part again to be true, it says it's 249 grams in weight, 30-minute max flight time, 4K HD video transmission, vision sensors, and GPS precise hover, so basically sensors on the bottom, not on the back or the front. And it has a 3-axis gimbal, records 2.7K. From seeing videos and stuff online too, the picture quality didn't seem like it was breathtaking or anything like that. I guess it's just due to the small camera. And when you look at the actual specs on the DJI page, for example, it says 2.3 CMOS, and as well, it has only 40 Mbps for bitrate. So a lot of people were saying before, why not make it 4K and all that, which it should be in my opinion anyways. Maybe it was just due to things like the weight. But with the bitrate that low, the 4K would have probably looked pretty bad. But in general, I'm trying to avoid comparing too much from that camera to say something higher end like the 2 Pro, because it would be like saying, oh, look at this action camera compared to a mirrorless camera. Wow, that mirrorless is way better. Well, of course it's way better. It's a lot bigger and more expensive as well. But it makes you wonder too with the name, since they called this the Mavic Mini, whether or not that's kind of making people's expectations higher. Because for myself anyways, when I think of the Mavic brand, I'm thinking of something that's portable, that's kind of prosumer level, so to speak. And if they called it like, say, I don't know, like the Tello 2 or the Spark 2, maybe the expectations wouldn't be as high. Then again, they probably did this purposely just because the brand of the Mavic is really high on people's radar. With that said though, an extreme negative I found out was apparently with the camera in the video mode, you can't do anything in manual. So essentially, if you're flying the drone and capturing video, everything is on auto. Everything from the white balance to exposure. So that's kind of a huge negative actually. That makes it, for example, if you're basically filming something like the sky, if it has auto white balance, you could basically see the scene just all of a sudden morph into like a different color as the camera tries to determine, okay, what is the proper color mode to put on this thing, so you can't actually manually change that. And the weird thing with that is apparently with the regular camera mode to taking pictures, you can actually adjust things like the exposure, so it makes you wonder why can't you do that in the video as well? Now, people are wondering about whether or not this thing could stand the wind, and basically it says here it has a wind resistance speed of 8 ms scale 4, so it's actually pretty good for something that small. Although I don't think this thing would do very well, like just say here, like in the mountains in BC, Canada, when you go really high up, like you could just be standing on the edge of the cliff. I can't imagine this thing doing very well when you're actually up there. I did try to find some videos about it, and it seemed like for the most part from the people that were trying it, my kind of assumption is true. When you're that high up, this thing will struggle just because it's so small. But of course, the big selling point here is the weight. It's under 250 grams, so at 249, which they pretty much advertise everywhere, even on the drone itself, technically this thing should allow you to bypass a lot of the federal regulations, which should be the biggest selling point in my opinion. So low quality camera, whatever you want to say and all, is it worth it still in that sense? And I think that's kind of the tricky part as well. I guess for the first thing is, this thing apparently does use things like the Flysafe, so the Geofence, and that could be an issue. So let's just pretend an example here in Canada. Essentially, you can fly it wherever you want with basic common sense, because the law here is basically just be safe and don't endanger other, say, aircraft or people. Whereas in this case, with the software what DJI has, it can actually block you from flying through various places based on a radius around things like the airport. So let's use an example for here in Vancouver. There's an airport here, and obviously you can't fly there normally with a large drone or 250 grams and up. That's basically what the regulations are. If you want to fly there, you need an advanced license, and you basically need to go through a whole process to get permission. So you can see with this example, DJI has its own database of where it deems as a no-fly zone. So you can see here there's a huge radius and all these paths around the airport area, and the radius is pretty large where it pretty much expands into residential areas as well. So technically here, in order to fly in those places, you would need permission from DJI, where you'd have to unlock it through the software. So I guess this is kind of the tricky part, where even though technically here in Canada, you can technically fly it wherever you want, if you're in one of these DJI zones, you basically can't do it without DJI's permission. Now, many of you seen me go through the whole process where essentially you first go through, like here in Canada, through what's called Nav Canada. They'll give you the permission, and then afterwards, you're supposed to send DJI the permission for this. Once DJI sees your permission, then they'll say, okay, we'll give you basically the unlock code and so forth. And basically you download that, and then you can fly as is with whatever restrictions they gave you. So for example, if they said, hey, you can fly within this airport or whatever, 30 meters in the air, 100 or whatever, that's what they would unlock. And they want to know the radius as well. But that's a tricky thing that's left unanswered here, because again, here, you're supposed to be able to fly that drone wherever you want as long as you do it in a safe way. And in this case too, since Transport Canada considers these type of drones as a toy, they're not even going to bother. There's no approval process or anything. So how do you unlock it in this case with DJI? Because remember, even with this, it's a pretty large radius where even if you're in your own residential area, you technically can't fly it in that way if you're in that zone, so to speak. And an example where people would use it, which they actually show in some of the videos from other people as well, are people flying this indoors. Technically here with the regulations, if your flight is indoors, there's no regulations, they don't apply. Even if your house, for example, is inside that airport zone, you can technically fly the drone. But now you can't because of this software. So how do you unlock that in that case? They're not going to give you permission like Nav Canada saying, oh yeah, you can fly your toy drone here. It's like, your email records are just going to say, what, it's a toy, we don't regulate this. So that's basically left unanswered. Another interesting thing I found when you were watching the videos, just from all the vendors and stuff they gave the drones to sample, you can even see in some of the videos there's a marking there, and if I'm not mistaken, I mean anyone in the US can correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that the tag that you get in terms of registering your drone, and then you have to stick your number there somewhere visible? Isn't that for the FAA? Because normally that's supposed to be the incentive here, correct? You don't have to register it. Yet in this case, you can even see even the company themselves register the drone. So it makes you wonder if it's not as clear-cut as you may think, where you can basically fly this wherever you want and all that. It makes me wonder what's going to happen in regards to that, because even in some sites, like here on a US online site, it says here, the way they advertise it, the Mavic Mini from DJI is a compact drone that offers professional quality results with no restrictions. Thanks to its small size, the Mavic Mini can fly where large drones are legally not permitted or where a drone license is required. So it makes me wonder how many people are going to go with that perception saying, oh, there's absolutely nothing to abide by, whatever, let's just fly this wherever, and then that ends up not being the case in their country. So by the looks of it, you'll still need to research into it. I can only talk about the Canadian laws, because obviously that's where I'm from here and I understand it really well. So in that case, it's kind of interesting whether or not this 249 is going to be all it's cracked up to be in terms of giving people the freedom. For here, the main benefit would be, let's just say you're in a controlled zone where normally you need permission. There's this little small event that you'd like to capture. There's a bunch of people and everything like that. Technically, in Canada here at least, you should be able to fly this drone and capture the moment really quickly. Now, whether or not that works like in the rest of the world, I don't know. But at the same time with this geofence and stuff, that kind of puts everything in a loop. For the remark about the drone coming with the right tools, again, what's that all about? Well, apparently for this drone, for the propellers, it's not a quick release propeller like the ones that you may be used to. Like for example, with the Mavic, you can basically just quickly put it in and put it out with just a twist. Whereas this one, apparently you have to actually screw it in and out. Makes you wonder why they went with that design. I don't know how much of a factor that would be for people with a small drone, because usually I guess with propellers and stuff, the only time you really need to replace them and stuff is if you crash them. And since this folds up, it shouldn't be that big of an issue. But it makes me wonder why they kind of went backwards in that way. It does advertise 30-minute of flight time as well. In ideal situations, obviously. I think realistically, you'll probably be flying it for about 22 minutes or so, or to 25. And the controller does use Wi-Fi. So it makes you wonder how reliable that is, because I know a lot of people say with things like the Mavic Air, it basically loses signal a lot because of it. Now the price was kind of surprising to me. Although you'd first look at it and see it, hey, it's $3.99 US for the regular bundle, and for the Fly More it's $4.99, so that's basically as they said before with all the leaks and stuff. But apparently when I went to the site, I was like, hey, why is this $3.49 US for the regular one and $4.49 US for the bundle? Are they having a sale or something? It doesn't seem like it's an error, because based on other sites like this one here, it says the Mavic Mini is $459.99 Canadian, which would work out to the $3.49 US. I would assume maybe that has to do with all that trade tariff stuff between China and the US. So I guess if you're here in Canada, it's actually cheaper, so that's the good news for this. All in all, I would consider this drone, by the sounds of it, it's basically a Spark replacement, as we kind of figured. Just with the specs and all that, it's meant more for a newbie and a beginner who just wants to, I assume, just flying a drone just for fun. Or I could imagine, for example, someone who just wants to quickly capture something without the hassle of going through registrations and tests and all that. They just want to quickly capture stuff. This would be basically the drone for them. In many ways, I guess you could say it is like an action camera with no manual features or anything like that. I mean, it could work depending on your situation, because not everyone needs to capture super professional quality video or anything like that. So how about people coming from a mindset like myself, where you already have a drone, and this would potentially be a good supplement, because that's really appealing. The fact that the drone is under 250 grams, you should be able to fly it wherever you wish. Would you actually get it in that case? There's just so many points that came up tonight that makes you think still. For example, not being able to use manual mode, essentially having things like that geofence that will block you even if you could technically fly it wherever you wish. It just makes you wonder if it's worth it, because another way to look at it too is, here anyways, it will be probably a little over $500 or so with taxes and stuff. You could spend it on this, or you could essentially save that up and buy a different drone and treat it as if that drone's on sale for like what, 600 or 500 less or whatever. Like, that's a different way of thinking about it. So thinking if we went back in time and I was looking for my first drone, I was just starting out, would I actually get this drone over, say, the other ones? I'm kind of thinking hard here. If it wasn't for things like you couldn't control the video mode and all that, and they have this fence thing that still blocks you from essentially flying in places that you could, I'd probably still go with something like the Mavic Pro, honestly. Because for myself, I walk a lot, and a lot of the places I go is actually really high elevation, so I'd rather have the security, if that's the way to say it, having a larger drone that could actually handle things like extreme wind or height. I'd rather have the better quality, like at least like 4K and all that, so you can at least future-proof it to a certain extent. It'd be kind of like having the debate of, okay, mirrorless or action camera. Yeah, the mirrorless gives you better quality and stuff like that, but are you going to bring that out every single time without it being a burden? Are you going to miss the shot? Whereas an action camera is you bring it out and capture. But if the action camera was only, again, like 2.7K and all that, it makes the decision more difficult. Like in that situation, when it comes to cameras, I would have been inclined to maybe go with the point and shoot as opposed to the mirrorless or the action camera if I had to debate about the specs like that. What do you guys think? Is this an instant buy for you? Are you brand new to drones? Would it be appealing to you in that way? Do you already have one? Would you still get it as a supplement? But ultimately, they even say with cameras, the best camera is the one you're gonna actually use, and that's true in so many ways. Like even with things like the drones, some people have those really huge ones, they're so fantastic, but people never bring them out and fly just because it's so cumbersome to carry around, which was initially my reason to get something portable like that Mavic Pro. Alright, see you guys later.